Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this meeting of the Scrutiny and Performance Committee of Perth and Kinross Council of Wednesday, the 28th of January 26. I'm the convener, Councillor Colin Stewart. I'm joined by my vice convener, Bailey Alistair Bailey, by clerk to the committee, Ms Molly, and by our strategic lead for legal and governance, Ms Simpson. Welcome all to the meeting. Are there any apologies or substitutions?
Thank you, convener. We have an apology from Councillor Carr with Councillor Grant Stewart substituting, an apology from Councillor Forbes with Councillor James substituting. We have a couple of members joining us online this afternoon, so when I call out their name, could they please confirm they're present? Councillor Frampton.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor James.
Hi, Kirsty. Present.
Thank you. Councillor Robertson.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shires.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Welch.
Present, thanks.
Thank you. All other members are present in the Chamber's convener.
Thank you. Can we move on to declarations of interest? If anybody has a declaration of interest, just to stick DI in the chat. Councillor Shard.
Thank you, convener. A non-financial interest as a member of the Joint Committee of Tayside Contracts. I'll just stay for the session, so I don't think it's...
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, convener. I'm a member of the Joint Committee of Tayside Contracts in a non-financial position. Thanks
for those. Item 3 on the agenda then is the minute of the Scrutiny and Performance Committee of the 19th of November, our last meeting. Can we agree the minutes of the last meeting? Agreed, thank you. Item 4 on the agenda is our outstanding business statement. We've got items 60, 61 and 62. We were seeking further information from the arm's length external organisations on national insurance contributions, and that's been circulated. We were seeking information on plans to bridge the income gap from swimming from Live Active Leisure, and that's been circulated. And we were seeking guidance from the Scottish Public Services Ombudsman to ensure that complaints are dealt with in a child-friendly manner as required by the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child in relation to our Council Complaints Performance Report, and that's been circulated. Can we remove these completed items from the outstanding business statement, or does anybody have any questions on them? All okay, thank you. Right, we'll move on to the substantive business of the agenda today. We have got Tayside Contracts annual report, but before that we're going to get updates from arm's length external organisations, the ALIOs, Culture Perth and Kinross, Live Active Leisure and Perth Theatre and Concert Hall, and we have their respective chief executives, Helen Smout, Paul Cromwell and Christopher Glasgow with us in attendance, but we also have Karen Johnson, Steve MacDonald and Serge Marone, who manage the contracts and the connections with the ALIOs. So I think, who am I going to turn to first? Mr. MacDonald, I think you're going to give a wee introduction in terms of the partnership with Culture Perth and Kinross, and then I'll turn it over to the chief executives of the ALIOs and then open it up for questions. Mr. MacDonald first.
Yeah, thank you, convener, and good afternoon, members. So just by way of a short introduction, so the CPK update is focusing on the work that's been done so far throughout 25-26 towards the future sustainability of our library services. So before passing on to Helen, just to give a little bit of context from a local authority perspective, we as a service have been working with CPK on engagement sessions with local communities to look at the current library provision and to explore future operating models and service delivery. And that's in response to the council meeting that was held in February last year, and that was instruction that was provided. The libraries are a statutory service for which we as a council are responsible, and CPK delivers them on our behalf. That statutory definition of what an adequate service looks like is currently being looked at a national level, and that will help to inform our future plans. And we're obviously kind of dialed into that particular conversation. As regards the contract that we have with CPK, a number of KPIs are in place between the council and CPK, which align with and help support the delivery of our council priorities, particularly around learning and attainment. They also help our places celebrate their cultural identity and positively impact on our local economy, supporting tourism, culture, skills and footfall across our region. As I said, we have been in the process over the last 9 months or so of engaging with our communities on future library provision, and this will help to inform a number of options which will be presented to members in due course. So I'll pass over to Helen just to give a bit more detail on some of that activity and set, I think, the context in terms of which our libraries operate. Thank you.
There we go. So thank you, Steve, and thank you for convener to the opportunity to update the committee on the work we've been doing in the libraries. Just a little preface to that. As the committee is aware, we currently have 12 library venues across the region, 2 mobile libraries which serve our more remote and rural communities which lack physical provision. Much to the delight of those mobile library users who've had disruptions to services recently due to the unreliability of very aged mobile library vehicles, we will be launching 2 brand new replacement vehicles later this year. Thanks to external funding we have been able to receive from the Eric Lowe legacy. The generosity of Eric Lowe also extends to the provision of a range of titles for children and adults in other languages, meaning we have one of the most extensive libraries of that material, and our work delivering circular economy and climate related initiatives. We continue to see growth in our library usage, particularly over the course of this year, with 340,843 visits in the first 3 quarters of the financial year. More than 1 in 3 of those visits is not book related, which demonstrates the value of a library services to their community in a much broader sense. That said, we did issue more than 222,000 titles over the same period, 20,000 ebooks, 19,472 e-audiobooks, which is an 8.5% increase on the same period for the previous year. More than 1 in 10 residents in Perth and Kinross is a regular user of library services. The value of libraries, I know, is understood by this committee, but the financial impacts and benefits to users perhaps less so. Our e-newspaper service alone saves users tens of thousands of pounds each year. As an example, we've had just under 2,000 issues of Good Housekeeping magazine so far this year, content that would otherwise have cost readers more than £11,500. As part of our ongoing work that Steve mentioned, we've also commissioned ECOS to undertake a socio-economic impact study. This was something that communities were very interested in to be able to demonstrate and have evidence of the wider impact of library services. This shows a return of an investment of every £1 that the council invests in its library services of £7.96 return in Perth and Kinross. That's higher than the figure that is used nationally for libraries, which is £6.95. The study also shows that in the last 18 months, community libraries have collectively generated £10.96 million in gross socio-economic value, approximately 8 times the level of investment that the council currently makes. We have been working as part of, as Steve said, with communities, and we've held more than 94 events over the last year across all our library services. The engagement sessions that we've had, we've been working to co-produce action plans with communities, which identify further ways in which communities can support their local service, add value and seek to raise funds. With 12 such groups across the region, that's a very intensive piece of work. as you can imagine, and we have engaged additional capacity to help us. Robin Patel has been working alongside our excellent staff and has delivered action plans co-produced for all 12 services. Communities have been active participants and very supportive, giving their time and energy to this process. They've been creative and their passion for their services is evident in every interaction. And sometimes those are bumpy interactions because they do care so much. As the additional funding we received was for a 2-year period, we were asked to bring forward options for how services can be delivered when this funding comes to an end. As statutory services which are free at the point of delivery, there is no external funding solution which can support ongoing core library service provision. Having not kept pace with inflation over a 10-year period, the funding for libraries has already seen a real term reduction of 38%, and as a consequence, our staffing has reduced by 46%, with much lower staffing headcount than any other comparable local authority. Without additional sustained financial support, and I do appreciate the very challenging finances within the public sector at this time, but without that support, then the options for service reduction must be considered. And these are the conversations that we're now having with local communities, a range of options, including status quo, and the opportunity for communities to identify further options are currently in development with council officers, as Steve has said, and those groups who are engaged in the process. It is difficult for communities. They don't want to take on the running of a statutory provision. They recognise that they don't necessarily have the community wealth to support it financially, but they do want to retain their services. However, we will, as Steve has mentioned, bring forward a paper to council for consideration in due course. Thank you.
Do the other chief executives want to go now, or should we do questions to CPK first? Okay, I think we'll take questions to Culture, Perth and Kinross first, and then we'll go to the other ones just to so that we're keeping it all focused. That involves me A, switching back to the chat to check for questions, and B, switching off my loudspeaker. Councillor Allen.
Well, there. Thank you, convener. Thank you for that, Helen. I just want to pick up on one of the comments that you made so that I'm clear that I haven't misheard or misrepresented what you said. Did you suggest that for every £1 we invest in the libraries, we get a £7 return?
Yes, thank you. We actually get a £7.96 return for every pound you invest.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Smith.
There we go. Look at that. Helen, mine is not so much a question as a thank you. Okay, the service you provided to people who are obviously housebound, etc. I think I spoke about it before. The lady in concern is now unfortunately passed away, and the family would like to thank you, because I can honestly say, because I had to go and see her every day, that she really enjoyed the service. She loved her books, but she certainly told me when you sent her a bad book. But just thank you very much on behalf of the family, and I certainly hope that service continues, because it was a great service. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'll pass that on to our volunteers.
Thank you. Vice Convener.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for all the work that's going on in the background. Just a question to get some clarity on the economic impact number. Am I right in understanding that's one of the ones that's sort of modelled? So it's better to characterise it as for every £1 invested, a total of £7 and something circulates in the economy, meaning that it's taking the sort of I'm trying to think of the right word, sort of echoes down the supply chain. So for example, if you pay a salary of £20,000, it will count that £20,000 plus maybe 80% of the £20,000 that they'd spend locally. So to that effect, it's not that someone has £7 and something in their pocket, It's more that that is the amount of economic activity created in the local area. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So it's measuring both socio-economic aspects of that. We particularly picked to use the Green Book criteria for that because that's what's most commonly used in public sector. And it also means that it's interrogable, if that's a word, across the piece. And it was important for us because, again, you know, the gross added value to the economy is broader than actually just what happens within the building. And I think that's important to understand for all of the ALIO activity.
Thank you. And if I could just follow up on that point, that was contained in a report by a consultant I think you'd engaged called ECOS. Is that work finished, or is that an interim session? And if it's finished, can councillors?
Yes, so we got the report in on Friday. So there are a couple of typos. So we met with them yesterday to go through that. So we will get a revised report by mid-February just with that. We've also asked them to include a much more detailed breakdown so that all of the data was within there as an appendix. So I'm very happy to circulate that. We will certainly be using it as a piece of evidence when we apply for funding and when we talk to external partners about how we take work forward.
Okay, thanks. So that information then is just literally hot off the press. So very nice timing from ECOS to get that to us before the committee today. I think it might be worthwhile making a note that when we get the report, we should circulate it to all members of council rather than just to the members of the committee, because it will be crucial when we're looking forward to the budget in 27-28. I just wanted to maybe ask, you indicated, Helen, in your introduction that there had been a huge amount of activity in terms of the sustainability plan, the library plan, library sustainability plan meetings and community involvement, but it wasn't always smooth sailing. I can't remember what phrase you used, but it was putting it delicately. I was just wondering how those discussions affect the people involved and how they're managed, because you will know that I've been at some slightly fractious meetings, but the work that's come out is really good, but there must be a process there, therefore, of managing all of them.
Yes, thank you for that. I think it's safe to say people care hugely about their library service. If you use library service, you are heavily invested in them. And that passion sometimes can come out as frustration and having to have conversations that are difficult and challenging, I think it would be fair to say. I think there are differing views in any community. There's differing views amongst my staff, about the ways forward. And in many ways, as difficult as it can be for those to be surfaced in the meetings, it's important that they are. It's important that we hear those differing views. It's important that people hear each other's views in these things. We don't want anybody to be upset. We try to avoid that wherever possible, but sometimes that passion does tip over into that. And we try always to make sure that the discussions are representative as well, and that it's not just the loudest voice in the room, whether that's ours or someone in the community. And we do try to make sure that our staff are supported, because they can be difficult. They're being paid to do a job, and quite often, as elected members, I'm sure are very aware, it can be challenging in a public environment. So, we continue to do that. We continue to work forward. I think all of the action plans we now have are probably in a state where they don't need monthly meetings necessarily. We might be able to reduce that in some areas. That takes some pressure off staff. As I say, we have almost half the number of staff we used to have. So taking forward this work is always challenging. It's additional, if you like, but it's really meaningful. And I think that the solutions that are coming up are very localised. They've very much got the investment of local communities in them. And I think it's really exciting to see how that's developing.
Thanks. I see you've got a second question, Councillor Allen, but I'm on a roll at the moment. I was just wondering, that leads me in nicely to my next question, which was about how we manage the process of taking forward the actions in the plans on an ongoing basis. Because you mentioned Robin Patel, who's the consultant that you've engaged to help facilitate that, but I'm presuming that that's not a full-time ongoing position. So at some point there'll have to be a transition to locally managing the plans rather than getting that external input.
Yeah, I think you've answered the question. Absolutely. So our staff have been attending all of the meetings. They're very engaged in those meetings. And I think the plans are now at a stage that, you know, they can start to take that forward. We would have liked Robin to have been able to stay on a bit longer to support us through into the new financial year, but that's just not possible, unfortunately. So I think that all of that transition work will happen, and you know, we'll continue to do it, and we'll continue to try and recruit other voices into these meetings as well. You know, they're very open. Anybody in the community can get involved. There will be new ideas that come up during the year. There'll be things that people can get involved in. And we want to continue that, but we want to continue it in a way that's manageable for the communities as well as for staff, because obviously there is a lot of call on communities' time nowadays. But I think that there are some really lovely things to take forward, and you will start to see from us certainly much more visibility around things like fundraising opportunities and things that we can take forward. So I think we've got a sustainable way of working going forward. We just needed that extra input to get everything set up to start with.
Thanks. And then lastly, the plans are all now in place, and there's helpfully I can't remember what the document was titled, but there's helpfully a sort of summary of some of the key ideas from across the piece, and which will be useful in making sure that we can share best practice across all of those friends of library groups. But moving into the future, the options appraisal for the 27-28 budget, those meetings have started, and I was just wondering about initial feedback from any of those meetings, because my understanding is that that's caused that frustration that we had moved past with the plans to sort of resurface.
I think it would be fair to say, you know, communities, as I've said, really support their library services. They don't want to have a conversation about the potential option that reduces or might make change to that in a way that they have no control over or input over. And I understand that, but it is important that we explore all the potential options, both short-term, medium-term and long-term potential options. And I think once we have been able to get beyond that initial kind of, oh my goodness, why are we doing this? Then actually there's some really good conversations emerging from that. There's really good engagement. People are thinking really hard about, well, what could it be? And hopefully they might come up with some ideas that we've not thought of or that the council hasn't thought of as well. So, you know, I think that process of change, well, change is always iterative, and I think that process of developing the options will be too, but we wanted to have it as a genuine conversation and say, so what else could be added? What are the impacts of these on you as a community? But ultimately, at the end of the day, a decision on that is the council's. You know, it's not CPK's, and it's not the communities. And as I said, that will be taken in due course.
Thanks very much. Councillor Allen, your second question.
Second of many. No, I'm only joking. So, thank you for that. I'm going to come back to this £1 investment and an £8 return on investment, Helen. We're currently coming up towards budget setting, and that's always a frustration for all the councillors. And libraries have been seen in the past as an easy target when it comes to setting aside budget. Now, I know that you're engaging with all of the communities, and when the communities get a hold of every £1 invests, we get an £8 return on investment, they're going to wonder why we're even discussing it. I am hopeful that we can find a way to embrace what you've suggested today And when we see the cold hard facts of that, it'll maybe encourage us all to support the libraries and the investment in them in the future a wee bit more positively in the future. Thank you.
Okay, I think that was more of an observation than a question, but you can come in if you want, Helen, but no. Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat. Perth and Kinross. So thanks very much for coming along, Helen, and for your introduction, and thanks for the work, the huge amount of work that I know has gone into developing those library plans over the last nine-ish months. It's really valuable, and I think there's some great ideas coming out of that. We'll turn now to Mr. Cromwell from Live Active Leisure.
I'll do it. I mean, I'll be similar introduction to all. I think, you know, with all the three allios here today, we obviously manage the contract through our service, and we've got a range of KPIs similar to Culture, Perth and Kinross, and they're reported on an ongoing basis throughout the year to this particular committee as well as others. So I think the particular focus on this one was to detail all the policy applied for the venue closures over the festive period, and also an update on the policy changes that have ensued since the recently reported incident in the changing areas of Perth Leisure Pool. But I'll pass over to Paul, who can provide an update on that stuff. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you and good afternoon. Thanks for the invitation to attend Scrutiny and Performance Committee today. So, as Steve has said, there's a couple of areas that the committee have asked for some additional information. So I will commence with the around our safe spaces in changing to begin with. So just to reassure the committee that safety of our customers is obviously fundamental and of paramount importance to the organisation. Its thread and culture runs from the board of directors to all areas of the company. Our internal systems include ongoing risk assessment, hazard identification processes, safety inspections and staff training to ensure we meet both legal and industry standards. The board receive regular updates on health and safety information, and a joint staff consultative committee is in place with representation from the board and staff from across our venues and services. This committee facilitates the culture of safety. The company also has over many years committed to QLM LeisureSafe, which is an independent health and safety audit and management certification tailored specifically for the sport and leisure sector. The on-site assessment covers key areas including health and safety management, including objectives, risk assessments and monitoring, facility-wide hazards such as COSH, electrical safety and contractor management, and specific hazard management for areas like swimming pools, gymnasiums and maintenance operations. The design of our swimming pool changing spaces across most of the estate are typical of the sector, and they provide a mixed-use changing village style. They provide a range of key benefits, including increased inclusivity. They also provide flexibility and convenience for families. They allow parents with children of the opposite sex to assist their children. They provide reduced waiting times where traditional gender-specific changing may have one facility at overcapacity while another is empty. They also accommodate specific needs. They provide better, more accessible changing facilities for individuals with caregivers of a different gender. Despite these significant benefits, there remains opportunities for inappropriate behaviour in these spaces. And when this happens, we understand how incredibly upsetting the violation of privacy is. To manage and mitigate this type of behaviour, our staff are vigilant and they conduct regular monitoring of these spaces. There is CCTV strategically placed to provide a visual deterrent and to support crime detection. And we liaise with police in relation to these issues and follow any advice provided. And of course, we also provide any support we can to the customers that have had these sets of circumstances. But be assured that we take these matters seriously. Moving forward, there is certainly the opportunity with PH2O and the investment plan for the pools at both Crieff and Kinross to improve the design of the swim and changing spaces. And this is something that I'm sure will be considered as part of these capital projects as they move forward. Thank you. Okay, I'll move forward in terms of our festive operating policy and arrangements. So from a broader perspective, we understand that when there are public and school holidays, that our venues and activities should be available, and our services are currently available throughout the year on this basis. The offer and operation of the company's venues and services during the festive period are treated differently, and they have evolved and been refined over the years through a combination of factors, including usage and trends analysis, historical arrangements, contractual arrangements, and of course, as a consequential impact of budget saving requirements over the years. Historical and trend analysis of usage approaching and during the festive period indicates lower levels of demand. This has therefore supported decisions to reduce operating arrangements while still providing a core offer of provision in key areas and venues. Festive operating arrangements for the various services delivered in the campuses are of course agreed in collaboration with other key partners, including Perth and Kinross Council, Mighty and Cultural Perth and Kinross. As an organisation, we are challenged to balance the need to operate efficiently, reduce costs, improve access and engagement, and to maximise revenue. These challenges are not always complementary to each other. However, we do continue to review our operating arrangements on an ongoing basis and proactively look for opportunities to make positive change. And as an example of this, the company board agreed to an officer recommendation to open the new Live Active Blair Gallery during the recent festive period, which I know was well received by the local community. Despite the range of ongoing pressures that we face, I hope this provides evidence and reassurance of our ongoing commitment to the development of the services that we provide in our communities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that introduction. And the first question is from the Vice.
Thank you, and thank you for taking the time to address the incident, which sounds quite concerning. However, I had to admit I'm not read up on this. I wonder if you could provide some form of summary of what the nature of the incident was, Mr. Cromwell, so that we can then scrutinise and ask questions as appropriate about your response to it. At the moment, it feels like it's difficult to understand whether your response was appropriate because we don't know what the incident was. Thank you.
I don't intend to go into a specific case, but I'm happy to clarify what the significant issue is. So I would imagine most people are familiar with a typical mixed-use changing village, which inevitably means that you don't have floor-to-ceiling cubicles, and therefore this allows for inappropriate behaviour and the violation of customers' privacy. So that's something, unfortunately, in the 35 years I've been in the sector that we have to deal with occasionally, but over a recurring basis over that period. It's part of the design, it's part of that compromise, I suppose, in terms of the areas that I've suggested that actually are positive in terms of having a mixed-use changing village. However, there are some compromises in the current designs. What we have to then do is how do we mitigate that? And we mitigate that through making sure that we have regular supervision of the area. We'll make sure that we have CCTV that's, again, is a visual deterrent. And it's also useful for crime detection. We will work and liaise with the police. And obviously, we will do everything we possibly can to manage that potential risk that we have to deal with occasionally.
Thank you. That's obviously concerning, but good to hear you're working on it. One thing I just want to clarify for others that are listening here, I'm familiar with Perth Leisure Pool, but others might not be. There hasn't been any change to the design of that area, has there? So this is either a change in behaviour or a change in the way people react to the behaviour, isn't it? So we're not in a situation here where we've implemented a new changing facility and there's a new problem. We're more in a situation where there is a problem, and in your view, is the problem getting worse, or has this always been an issue, Mr. Cromwell?
It is an inherent risk of the design, and the design is typical of what we have in the sector, and we have that design in 4 out of 5 of the swimming pools that we collectively operate in Perth and Kinross. There has been a change in that design, not surprisingly, in our most modern venue at Blairgowrie. So there, the design of that change in village is that they are floor-to-ceiling cubicles, and therefore they provide absolute privacy in that space. So although it's typical of the sector is moving forward. It's providing, materials that can last in that wet environment. So therefore there's definitely been development, as we're seeing at Blairgowrie. So we have the opportunity as we move forward to look at and mirror that design in terms of the work that we want to do, both in PH2O and in terms of the investment plans that we have for Kinross and Crieff pools.
Great, thank you. Good to hear you're on top of it. Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you for your deputation there. I'm going to ask a question about the closure of the swimming pool recently on 2 occasions for hygiene and health reasons. Now, I understand exactly why you've had to do that. I'm just wondering, how do we manage it? And do we find out and deal with the issue? Do we know if the people are doing this deliberately, if it's kids that are just having accidents? How do we manage it?
Well, I think my team shares everybody's extreme frustration at these incidents, and they seem to come as a cluster sometimes, but not for any particular rhyme or reason as part of that. So, as you said, Councillor, we are following national guidance in terms of what we have to do if we have a certain type of contamination, and unfortunately, that means that we have to substantially close the pool to the public for a period of time to allow for cleaning and disinfection processes to be completely to happen through our plant and systems. We have a full education program in place. We have signage in place, so we do everything we possibly can to remind people that if they are not well or anything else, that they obviously should not be attending the pool. Like I say, I think we are doing everything we possibly can. But it's incredibly frustrating, and again, it's not something that is unique to us. It's something that the sector obviously has to manage, and we have to just continue to reinforce the education and make sure that people are aware of the implications, the significant close down periods and the impact to everybody when these things happen.
Okay, Councillor Shires.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you for your presentation, Paul. My question's regarding the festive opening of the new rec at Blairgowrie, which was very welcome, and you'll know something that I had been asking about for many years on behalf of the community. My question's around the demographics of the people that actually used it, and I presume that's been gathered to know about marketing it for future potential opening, and whether it was as expected, whether it was families, whether it was individuals, if there was any kind of feedback about the usage and popularity of it.
Thank you, Councillor Shears. Yes, I mean, I think we also extended a price promotion as well across all areas to try and ensure that we were maximising attendance during this period. Unfortunately, the report is still being gathered at this time, but as soon as that's been published, then I'm happy to provide it to the committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to follow up on the Vice Convener's questioning. I think you said that the design of the new Blair Rec was different to Perth Leisure Pool, and that would be a lesson learned for the new PH2O and for the renovations to Kinross and Crieff. But there's 5. What's the other one, and would you be looking to do something similar in that further venue?
The other one is Breadalbin Community Campus, and obviously there's a wider discussion to have there. But again, the uniquely different arrangement at Blairgowrie, as I say, is its floor-to-ceiling cubicles, which presents just a different offer moving forward.
Thank you. And on the Blair Rec point, one of the concerns that's been raised with me by constituents is about the excuse me, about the parking arrangements. I think there was a communication which suggested that there were public car parks at Leslie Street and Croft Lane that were available for use, but those are significant distances away from Blair Rec. And I just wondered what the extent of the problems was, and were there plans to alleviate that in future?
I'm just looking around to see if there's a council property colleague, but no. So obviously there are some challenges in terms. What we have is a temporary arrangement in terms of some of the outside areas at the new facility. And because of that, it's creating some issues. It's actually providing more spaces than the old facility did. However, we still have peak times, where we obviously have some challenges. Now, we've been working very closely with our colleagues in property around this project. There's been some additional changes to the external access point, which has created a few more spaces. And obviously, from a longer term perspective, more car parking will be provided when the old facility has been removed. So we're dealing with what is a temporary position in terms of there will be additional spaces, and it will alleviate some of the issues. So at the moment, what we're trying to do is a combination of things. We're just trying to make sure that people understand what parking is available, whether it's close by or further away, active travel, and what we're doing, where we're trying to increase some spaces even in the very, very short term on site, and then what we're going to be doing longer. So I think between all of that, as I say, we're working closely together with the council's property team on this to try and manage the situation as best we can.
And the other suggestion that had been put to me was that there might be issues with people associated with school using parking associated with Blair Rec, and whether that was a recognised issue or whether there had been dialogue about that, and to address the.
I think really going back to one, I think we're obviously the separate car parking for the school staff as well. So I think we're trying to manage what is a fairly complex situation there in the short term, but recognising that we're not exactly where we expected to be in terms of the additional car park provision from removing the old facility. So I think we're doing everything we possibly can around these transitional arrangements. We can't manufacture additional car park spaces beyond that at the moment. What we have to do is say, look, there's different ways of coming to the facility. There's different spaces that you can use. We've increased the amount of immediate spaces by rearranging some of the fencing, I think, and that type of thing. And obviously, longer term, we will have more car park spaces.
Thanks. And I think you wanted to come in again, Councillor Sharge.
Yeah, just following up on the point that you just made, just to thank our property team who have been really proactive on this. But I wonder if there could be, I don't know how we would manage that, but a bit more marketing of the options that there are for parking on the kind of school site out with school hours, because I think that's the bit that people are a bit. It's not quite getting through to people, so a bit of messaging on that would be helpful. But I know that Live Active staff on site have been really helpful, so thanks very much to them for that.
Thank you. Certainly, we've had messages, as you might be aware, Councillor Shears, we've had messages going out quite consistently in terms of that, but I'm happy to look at that again to make sure that we're being as comprehensive in our communications as possible. Thank you.
And Councillor Robertson.
Thanks, Convener. Paul, thanks for all your contributions so far. Can I ask you how we're getting on with the Dewars Drinks Centre? Is that building still in reasonably good order? And are there any problems going forward? I know we're in the middle of the curling season just now, but do you foresee any problems with it in the near future? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. I think anybody that's been to Dewars Centre over the last 12 to 18 months will see a significant change to the venue, and obviously we've moved health and fitness offer. It's alongside our ice offer. We've had 2 events this since the start of the year already in terms of curling. So I think the programme continues to work well and is successful. There's a discussion there, obviously, in terms of what does this model look like going forward, and that was obviously discussed and agreed by councillors 18 months ago, or last year. So obviously there's still some discussion there in terms of about that longevity and how we put in place a viable business case for its future, and that's something that we, myself and others, and including officers from the council, are meeting with curling representatives to discuss how that will move forward, but that's still very much ongoing at the moment.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm not seeing any further questions in the chat. Last call. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Cromwell, for coming along and giving us those updates. That's appreciated. And we'll turn now to Mr. Glasgow. Oh, Steve, you're going to... No. Mr. Glasgow from Perth Theatre and Concert Hall. Christopher, please.
Thank you, convener, and good afternoon, everyone. I was hoping Steve wouldn't do an introduction because a certain star in his family forms the part of, for me, what was the biggest success and achievement of Panto this year. I'm going to talk about the figures as well, of course, but it was a real moment of pride and excitement for us that for the first time since the pandemic, we brought back a children's company into the show. So we had 3 groups of 6 10 to 13-year-olds performing in rotation across 47 performances. I think what was particularly nice about that opportunity, beyond the moment of pride for the parents and the community members coming along to support them, was actually it's really diversified the young people coming in and doing work in our buildings, because a lot of them were not members of, for example, Perth Youth Theatre, so this was a new opportunity. But when you combine it with the increased activity of Perth Youth Theatre also doing a main stage musical now, it actually means there's no period throughout the course of the year where we don't have young people other than the summer holidays rehearsing for actual live performance within our buildings and on our stages. And that feels particularly relevant as we head into February and Perth Youth Theatre's 60th anniversary. More widely, I'm also very pleased to say that the Snow Queen is now our highest selling panto on record, 17,200 tickets with a total value of £360,000. That's an 11% increase on last year's panto, Mother Goose, and an 8% increase in our previous best-selling panto 2023's Aladdin. Also looking at the impact of Panto since reopening after the pandemic, in total our ticket sales have generated £1.5 million worth of income for the organisation. However, I would stress as I go on to talk a wee bit more about the complexity of our model, that is income, not necessarily profit. I think the interesting thing when you look at the balance of our programme and then move on to the wider Christmas season, is last year, although Mother Goose did not beat the previous year, we actually had the highest selling winter programme on record, and that's because we had a number of big headliners secured for the concert hall, like Callum Beattie, Midure, Skippinish. Unfortunately, we didn't have the same options this year, so whilst Panto has succeeded, the concert hall has fallen short at about 16% below where it was last year. So that makes it quite a tricky balancing act for us. And a lot of that comes down to the deal mix in the concert hall. When it's our own production that we produce, it's a very different thing because we're completely in control of that. Whereas the concert hall, we're on different models, so a show could be coming in a split or a rental. And at the moment, we're seeing an increased demand for rentals because it works better in the programmer's favour. However, we are working on that, and our next step at the moment is, following the retirement of James Waters, our Director of Classical Music, we're recruiting a new position, which is the Head of Music, which is going to be an in-house post. And that, much like our Director of Commercial Operations for conferencing and events, has been given a very clear commercial objective beyond the artistic as well. So I hope that helps give a wee bit more detail on how the model works and the tricky balancing act, but hopefully also doesn't detract from the success of this year's panto. Thank you.
Thanks for that update on the festive programming. Are there any questions from members for Theatre and Concert Hall? Not like you, Councillor Allen. I'm not seeing any questions, so thank you very much. Thanks, Christopher. Thanks to all of the ALIOs. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Helen. Thanks, Christopher, for coming along and giving us an update on those very current issues. Thank you. Much appreciated. I think we will take an 8-minute recess just to allow the officers and the ALIOs to leave, and then we'll move on to Tayside contracts. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move on to the Tayside Contract Annual Performance Report for 24-25. We've got a short slide-based presentation. We've got the Managing Director, Mr. Mackay, here with us, and some colleagues. Would you like to introduce your colleagues? And we'll get the slide presentation up on screen. Thanks very much.
Okay, thanks, Convener. Thanks, members, for the opportunity to present our annual report today. As you said, I've got a couple of colleagues along with me today. I have Diane Kidd, who is our strategic lead for finance and governance, to my right, and Ewan McNaughton, who is the head of operations, to my far right. Today, as has been outlined by the convener, this is Tayside Contracts Annual Report. Performance report referencing the period of the 1st of April 2024 to the 31st of March 2025. So we're sitting here discussing today performance from nearly 10 months ago. Feels a bit strange and awkward, but that's where we are. So just as a bit of a background, in order to comply with Section 13 of the Local Government Scotland Act, Tayside Contracts is required to produce an annual report. So this annual report for 24-25 is produced to comply with that. And the performance report summarises the main points within our business plan, which is for 24 to 27, and outlines and basically follows the principles of our 5 key strategies. Those 5 key strategies are confidence, people and relations, commercial approach, collaboration and sharing, continuous improvement in performance, communities, councils and customers. And when I go over the presentation, we will link in with that. And then the report itself is broken down into 3 sections. So an overview providing some highlights, so we want to say at the front, section 1, a high-level overview, executive summary, and section 2 basically provides the core parts of the plan, again set out under those 5 strategic themes, delivering or highlighting the key highlights, case studies, key pressures, and next steps for each of these. And then within section 3, we also have detailed our key business plan indicators and an efficiency statement. So overall, maybe a bit biased, but I believe it's a positive report. There are clear areas in it that we are identifying where there's maybe some improvement to be made, but overall it's a positive. So moving on, if I get next slide, please. So just want to cover some of the highs that are within the report. So overall income within 24-25 totaled 98 million. 91 million of that came from services delivered directly to the 3 councils, so 93%. That was a 4% increase on the previous year. What would say that's actually all associated with increase in inflationary increases, so food, materials, etc., and pay award. The reality being an actual downturn in the spend from the 3 councils if you take out the inflationary increases. And I think it's important to highlight that. Of that, 98 million, Perth and Kinross contributed approximately 37.5 million, 41% of that annual turnover. We achieved a distributable surplus of 813,000, That was 21% up on what we budgeted of 670,000. And of that, Perth and Kinross, of that 41%, will receive 333,000, which is above the budgeted surplus, which we'd projected at 274,000. One of the objectives within our business plan is about increasing our external income, and I'm pleased to say that we increased our external income in that particular financial year by 1.5 million on the previous year, so 27%, so up to 7 million, representing 7% of our total income. Some other areas I want to bring out is the success of our school meal action plan. We increased the meal sales over the whole of the council area by 3.6%. We would have increased within Perth and Kinross, but unfortunately, the primary schools and some secondaries were impacted by the strikes that took place. There was 10 days of strikes locally within Perth and Kinross, which we estimate around about 50 to 60,000 meals were lost, what we would normally have produced. So overall, meals within Perth and Kinross were just over 2 million, 2,070,000 meals were produced, split between nursery, primary and secondary. Preschool meal uptake within the primaries was 65.4% and secondary was 53.6%, and that was an increase on the previous years as well. We also focus on what we can do to be as effective, efficient as we can, and within the report, as I've said, we were able to achieve just under 900,000 in efficiencies and cost reductions in 24-25. 760,000 of that, which will be, or we've identified as being recurring, so they're not just one-off. In relation to our community fund, we continue to deliver in that area, probably one of the quietest years with regards to the community fund, just the way that came through, but we supported 32 groups across all the local areas at an equivalent value of 19,000. Within Perth and Kinross, that was one full application and 2 fast tracks. That we've had a better uptake within the Perth and Kinross area in 24-25. We're also recognised within our street lighting and transport services through external awards recognition in 24-25 through APSI awards, although they weren't successful in actually securing any of the winners, but they were recognised for the contributions in the service they delivered. And then finally, I want to bring out was in relation to our incident levels, or otherwise generally referred to as accidents. So we had a total of 119 incidents. That was down 4% on the previous year. In relation to our health and safety RIDOR reportable, so these are legally have to be reported to Health and Safety Executive, a total of 13. That was down 24% on the previous year. So a lot within the document, try to summarise the highs within there. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So just want to pick up on some of the key pressures that we had within the year. So as has been the case for a number of years, there's been the marked ongoing uncertainty around about both local and global economies, affecting supply, demand, materials, but also financial markets. We also had a further significant pay award, which put additional pay pressures on us. Every 1% equates to 560,000, and the overall cost pressures to TSI contracts in 24-25 were just under £1 million. And that is an ongoing challenge. I'm pleased to say within the coming financial year, we do know what the pay settlement is going to be and makes it far easier. Despite some of these ongoing challenges of recruitment difficulties with regards to sickness levels in some localised areas, we continue to deliver all the services for the 3 councils with no service failure. There'd have to be some service adjustments, but there wasn't in any particular points where we were having to reduce. Also, our sickness absence levels, and we've managed to achieve our key KPI within the business plan, but it's still causing issues with service delivery in some areas. And then the move of the organisation, like councils, that zero carbon operations. There's a number of activities that we undertake within Tayside contracts that are high contributors, and we've got the ongoing focus of reducing waste in all these particular areas, decarbonising our fleet. In 24-25, approximately 80% would be classed as low carbon fleet. We're up to 91% in 25. But there is no getting away from the fact of net zero and decarbonisation comes at significant investment, and trying to get that balance with other objectives round about being effective and efficient. And as mentioned with some of the previous speakers today, there's a conflict there with some of the agenda items that we have to take part in. Okay, next slide, please. So the next steps. We have the ongoing development of our medium-term financial plan and change plan, which have been brought up to our joint committee. So that's about progressing the opportunities to increase our commercial and collaborative income, and that's about a safeguard and sustainability. But it's also puts Tayside contracts as a resilient model for the future, ready to adapt to a wide range of financial scenarios. So that's that dealing with the external factors of finance. Stakeholder engagement is something that we've also identified. So ongoing engagement with elected members, and appreciate the opportunity to come along and engage here today, as well as our own joint committee. And hopefully that gives the assurance of our cost effectiveness, creating opportunities for dialogue and what the priorities are for the three councils. And that's been backed up and supported by recent external audit reports from Audit Scotland that covered our 24-25 financial position, but also picks up on the wider areas of roundabout governance. On the collaboration, we picked up that we needed to get a better engagement with colleagues within the three councils. So we established what we called a strengthening collaboration. And this is basically a programme of engaging with council officers to make sure that we are maximising the opportunities that Tayside contracts can provide as the shared service provider, delivering standardisation, ensuring that there's cost savings that can be delivered, and also implementing best practice across all the three council areas. Transparency has also been picked up of what Tayside contracts is about, where we are with our finances. So performance information has been something that we've been developing since 23, but through 24-25, and we have launched our online dashboard. Currently that's available to our joint committee members, but something that we'll be looking at is how we can roll that out and to be available for wider committee members, and even just the those generally who may want to engage with Tayside contracts. From a people side of things, we have investors in people. We're an accredited investors in people organisation. We have an action plan. So through that action plan, we've also got a wellbeing strategy, recruitment and retention strategy, and that's all about what we can do to address some of the issues that have picked up around about the sickness absence, about attracting new talent to the organisation, and ensuring that we have the capacity to operate within the current setup, but also to be able to deliver on the commercial opportunities that we see are definitely available out there within the market. And lastly, a key thing for me coming into as the managing director, but something we've always focused on, is education engagement, strengthening links with the schools, universities, education and services, and that's about in learning rich and experiences, supporting positive career pathways and attracting new local talent. We will only survive as an organisation if we're supporting the young people that come through these particular avenues. So last slide, please. So what I just briefly touch on, this is covered within the annual performance report, but the supported self-assessment independent review that was carried out in 2023 by an independent consultant referred to as Keith Winter has shaped a lot of what we've been doing since 24-25 onwards. So within our business plan, also reflected within our annual performance report, and also through a recent restructure that we've undertaken within Tayside Contracts 12 months ago. So within that, one of the key things that came out, and one of the reasons actually for being asked to come along and attend Scrutiny Committee, this will be the third time Tayside Contracts has been here, was round about that trust and transparency. But what came out of that report was that Tayside Contracts was a valid model and fit for purpose, and really trying to make sure that we can demonstrate that through papers that we're presenting here, such as our annual performance report, but through other engagement with the Joint Committee members that can hopefully then pass that on through to yourselves as the wider membership within Perth and Kinross. So out of that particular report, there were 10 headline recommendations. 7 have been completed, 3 are ongoing. There was also a detailed action plan which had 15 actions. 12 of these have been completed and 3 are ongoing. And some of the actions which came out of that, just want to give an overview. So we had joint committee engagement sessions, visits to our particular depots and facilities. Engagement sessions that we undertook covered governance. So that was the clerk, with the clerk of the joint committee. And we also established a question and answer document to dispel, say, some of the myths or actually clarify the benefits of Tayside Contracts. We had an agreed schedule of activities. This has been published on our website, and that's basically a high-level document that details the services that Tayside Contracts deliver as part of its core, but that doesn't mean that's got to be unique. There's other opportunities to be explored with Tayside Contracts. We had a review of the joint committee reports, so making sure that reports were coming up to our committees were more around about that decision-making recommendations. So there was a rationalisation of that sort of report cycle. And as I've already mentioned, we also had the development of the performance framework and dashboard. So information that's available covering 15 headings, and that's available for any of the joint committee members to go into and access at any time. It's not a live system, so it doesn't give performance information as it is today. We have a schedule of when the information is updated, but it's not relying on reports having to come to committee to be able to see that. So just in summary, progression of these actions, believe strengthens transparency, streamlines reporting, and allows members to focus on the issues that matter most to their communities. And we'll be providing a full update on the supported self-assessment. We had a engagement session on this just last Thursday with joint committee members, and a report coming up to our committee in March. So thank you very much, convener. Happy to take questions.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mackay. First couple of questions are from Councillor Frampton.
Thank you. And thank you for the detailed report. I want to refer to page 30 of the report, which is page 43 on our papers. Whilst I understand the reason for trialling robotic cleaning technology to move with the times, given their schools and campuses are a hotbed for viruses and infections spreading, I question the reliance on them for cleaning thoroughly. These autonomous cleaners map the layout of a school. They are mostly designed for open, large floor areas, but not for stairs, corners, or under desks and chairs, etc. They cannot provide the same cleaning, deep cleaning, as a human cleaner does, as they cannot identify spillages or stickiness or stains that are on walls or in corners of rooms or under desks and chairs, etc. Do our human cleaners remain in the same room as the robotic cleaners, therefore ensuring to clear areas not done by the robotic cleaner, or are the robots just left to it? Is the use of robotics necessary due to staff shortages through either sickness or staff leaving posts to fill these posts instead? That's my first question. Will I ask the second one as well?
That was quite a long question. Do you want? We'll get an answer to that, and then we'll come back straight to you, Councillor Frampton.
Okay, right. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Frampton. what I would say is that as it's stated within the report, it's a trial, and it's definitely not about replacing existing cleaners. As you've picked up there, all the key points in relation to the benefits of a human being able to identify physically there's areas, the ability to be able to clean stairs and difficult to reach areas. We're always going to need the cleaners, the physical cleaners to do that. The trial of the robotics has been round about those big open areas like UK that they can, and has been determined can do that in an efficient way. So we don't see this answering the question of, is it to replace cleaners? Is it about recruitment? It's about sickness. It's about supplementing the resource that we have in place right now. So definitely not a case of removing physical cleaners with the benefit of the robotics. It's about supplementing them and making sure that we have got the best use of that physical cleaning staff. So if that means that we can clean an open area with the robotics, but we can put more of the cleaners into some of these more difficult to reach areas, that's the sort of thing that we're looking at. But this is very much at the early stages. This has been within one school, within Perth and Kinross, actually within the Auchterarder area. It's not went any wider than that at this moment in time.
Thank you.
And just go ahead with your second question.
Right, my second question was based on the yearly budget constraints. I would question the higher costs of acquiring robotic cleaning technology if trials were deemed to be successful. Is this affordable, not just in purchasing them, but also in the breakdown and maintenance of them going forward?
So again, what I would say there is that as a business case for us, we'd have to cover all these particular factors. So this has been about the trial in something, seeing what it can actually do physically, and before we would actually roll that out to say it's something we're going to implement across our whole cleaning service, that we would have to take that into account. So yes, capital cost of purchasing these, maintenance versus actually having replacing that as a physical person would all be considered.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Robertson, you're next.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you for your very encouraging report, which was good. You spoke about the challenges of getting to net zero. Can I ask you, when you're making decisions about fleet and various other things and the costs involved in changing vehicles, do you do a cost-benefit analysis on that, in as much as if to change something to a greener alternative is going to be seriously expensive? Do you bear that in mind when you're making a decision, or have you got no option but to go to net zero? Thank you.
I would say with regards to our fleet replacement, we have an asset management plan within that, and maybe not what we refer to as a cost benefit analysis, but looking at as a whole life cost, and the purchase of the physical vehicle along with lots of other factors come into that, and that's going to be the case for if you want to say decarbonising. So where we're at right now within Tayside contracts, I think like a lot of local authorities and organisations, our small fleet, so our small vans, etc., something that that cost benefit of moving from a fossil fuel or an internal combustion engine vehicle to an electric vehicle is stacking up. We're still not at the point of which is the majority of our fleet of above 7.5 tonnes of actually having vehicles that are going to be able to transition without being significantly higher capital cost. So our lorries and other areas, we are still continuing to purchase these while we can. So diesel engines, but we're getting them as the most efficient. So for example, like a Euro 6. But yes, we have to take all these particular factors into consideration. It's when legislation then pushes us towards that. That's where we're going to have to see either prices coming down, or we have to make the decision that we can't. Is it affordable? And I don't think that's unique to Tayside contracts. I think that's actually a consideration that's having to be made by all the 3 councils that we operate with.
Thank you.
Okay, and then the next questions are from Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Convener, and thanks, Douglas. I've got a couple of questions to ask. One of them might be particularly silly and I maybe should know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. On page 23 and 24 of your report and page 36 of ours, it talks about the number of repairs that are required, and it talks about the lighting and the LED technology which is used in Dundee as opposed to what's obviously not particularly reliable stuff in Perth and Kinross. Have you any idea if there's a move to move Perth and Kinross in the same direction?
Perth and Kinross are going through an LED replacement. I think what the report is trying to identify is that there are different ways in how that can be done. So there's a reference, and I think that's in relation to the defect repairs. So Dundee City Council a number of years ago decided to do a big bang approach to replacing their LEDs. So they've done that, which means that they're not getting the same amount of repairs and defects. Whereas in Perth and Kinross, they've done that on a more steady approach. We'll get to the point where that's been fully replaced. Now, there's pros and cons to that. As technology is developed, the cost of that has reduced. So you could argue, that if you were comparing something now, that back in Dundee they maybe paid a higher value, but they've not got the same amount of defects. Whereas Perth and Kinross have approached it in a different way. That was a policy decision from a TSI contracts point of view, and just try to report within here as part of that partnership arrangement of how things can be done differently, and sometimes they can have then different outcomes, particularly around about sort of the ongoing repairs.
Yeah, so Perth and Kinross are actually moving towards the same solution.
Yeah, from memory, Perth and Kinross are substantially down the road. I don't have, unfortunately, the figures here right now. I think that's something that would come through possibly your E&I committee with Fraser Croft and the team within there. But they're well down the road of LED renewals.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to page 29 of your report. That's on page 42 of ours. And it talks about a key objective of school meal review and to increase the uptake amongst pupils, entitled to free school meals. Now, I'm looking at the chart there, and they all seem to level off at 65%. And I'm just wondering if there's a particular reason for that. They have all levelled off at the same area.
Yeah, so I think it was post-pandemic. It was identified as a need to come together. So there's a school meal group, the school meal action plan, and what can be done to be able to improve that. So it's, as you say, the graphs show a very steep incline. It's then levelled off. If we had the answer right now, we'd be looking for that to continued. So what's happened, or what continues to happen, is there's ongoing engagement with regards the school pupils and the parents and carers round about what it is that they're looking for, or why they're not maybe taking up that free school meal. Looking at our own school menu, see if there's anything within that as part of that particular feedback, and just that ongoing engagement to make people aware that that free school meal entitlement is there, and encourage them to be able to do that. So that's a two-way thing between TSI contracts and the 3 councils, because it comes together as one. It's not done individually. So I think everyone would be delighted to see that continue to increase. I don't have the specific statistics here, but all 3 councils and Perth and Kinross, obviously here today, are at that higher end of free school meal uptake if we were looking at through sort of the 32 councils within Scotland.
And my final question's on page 45 of your report, and it's 58 of ours. and it goes on underneath the KPI of number of complaints and confidence, trust and relationships. You've had 55 complaints this year. I'm not questioning the complaints. There's 55, there were 26 last year and your target was less than 26. I'm just trying to get an understanding. Can you share with us what the main reasons for those complaints were? What are they coming in as?
They actually, they vary, and from memory, I did have some information for a previous meeting. I think actually the majority of these are actually coming through within the Angus area. So if you want to say these cover all, so of those 55, I think within Perth and Carnos there was only about 9 of the complaints that come in. But they range from the selection of the meals that somebody's not happy with, right the way through to I can't remember off the top of my head. There's about 5 of the areas that we've picked up. To put it into context, so that's about our own PIs. The number of meals that we are delivering, like UK, so just under 6,000 primary meals. When you put it into a percentage of you've had 55 complaints, it's something like 0.0002 right UK of every meal that we've served. So one of the things that we will look at is that actually a reasonable indicator, and are we setting ourselves up? You know, we've identified we didn't want to have any more than 24 complaints, but we went up to 55. As everyone's, I'm sure, aware that there has been press, etc., around about the use of ultra-processed foods within Tayside contracts menu and various petitions. We thought that is maybe something that was coming through, but the evidence or the complaints didn't specifically relate to that. But we do feel that that has encouraged people maybe to raise a voice more than others. But I say 55 complaints through the delivery of under 6 million meals isn't too bad of a hit rate.
Just to emphasise, I did say that I wasn't concerned about the number 55. I was just, did you have a handle on what the main area of concern was? But thanks for your answer. Cheers.
Councillor Grant Stewart.
Thank you, convener. My question is on page 51 of your annual performance report, that you got living wage accreditation. If we read in page 26, you've got 73% of the workforce on the Scottish Government living wage. And I was just wondering about what are the other 27% of your staff wages on?
Apologies. We've got living wage accreditation because we comply with that. So yeah, what we pay isn't the national living wage; it's the Scottish living wage. So that's part of that requirement for the accreditation, and that's 74% of our actual employees are at that particular point. So in effect, on the lowest grade available within our pay structure. And I would say would be the same across the councils. The other 24% are then on a grade above that. So we have grades that go from 1 through to 17. 74% of our employees are actually on that grade 1. And one of the reasons for highlighting that within the report is historically pay awards have been bottom loaded. So although within a council setting, you may say that your average pay award has affected you by 3.5%. If we go back probably about 3 or 4 years consecutively, the impact on Tayside contracts wage bill will have been in the region of 5.5%, 6.5% because of
that. Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much, convener, and thank you very much, Dougie, for that report. I thought it was very, very good. Okay. One thing that really bothers me, I think it's 23 or 52, the Perth Road Maintenance Partnership key results. Okay, what bothers me when I'm out and about, especially in the rural roads that I'm on, etc., right, is that on here you seem to have a lot of problems. They come along and they repair them, and the problem comes back again. Now, when you actually go out and look at the problem is the surroundings is probably like what's happened in the last couple of days. The water going on the roads is just unbelievable, right? Now, do you work alongside, for instance, like the farmers, the landowners, and say, listen, we're getting a lot of problems here because there's water pouring out of your field or whatever, and we're coming along and repairing this part of the road, and 2 months later, it's the same thing again, which would save a lot of money for a start. And also, it's got here that you say the gully cleansing is 23,000 gullies cleared. You'd hardly need to do that if all that muck wasn't coming onto the road and filling up the gullies within the time you come along and clean them. So it's always been a bugbear of mine that if we could have got all the ditches and all these things cleared, that our costs, etc., and our road repairs would actually come down. Do you actually talk with them, or do they just ignore you? Simple as that.
That's not something that, so as Tayside contracts, we don't directly engage. I would say that the Roads Maintenance Partnership team is made up of, say, the commissioning side. So Perth and Kinross partners within that determine what the policy specification of what the repairs are, and then Tayside contracts then deliver that. The partnership part of that comes together is actually what's the most effective way to do that. So rather than being very input driven, like it allows a more collaborative approach to how you can do some of those repairs and maintenance and make the budget go as far as it can. I know that officers that are out there, so the roads inspectors that will cover the whole Perth and Kinross area, will engage with farmers if they believe that what they're doing is having a detrimental impact. So, you know, a responsibility for them if they're putting muck on the road, particularly at this time of year, if there was a harvest, etc., about bringing that bringing that back up to a standard. All I would say is that, you know, deterioration of the road network, and as we've picked up, I think for everyone today, and as everyone knows around the table here, the extreme challenges on local government financing has meant that the investment in lots of assets hasn't been what people would be liking, and unfortunately, that's all we're seeing. Is the stark reality that the challenges round about investing in the road network, right? Okay, and I know that there has been reports come up. You'll have heard things round about steady state, just being able to keep it in a particular condition. When you get bad weather like we've got, it deteriorates. So the team really are going about trying just to make sure that things can be kept together, like okay, dealing with the condition, not to try and improve it, even struggling to keep it in that particular steady state. So until we're at a point, I know that the engagement with external parties, etc., can only help with that, but the actual condition of the roads requires investment. That's the real key underlying part.
Vice Convener.
Thank you, and thank you for the report. It's good to see you back in surplus and in fine health, so thank you for bringing that. A couple of questions come to mind since it's, I think, maybe 3, maybe 4 years since Perth and Kinross moved to use your central production unit for the school meals provision, a decision that was obviously quite contentious at the time. But my 2 questions are about how that's going. So one of the things that was discussed at the time was that moving to that central production unit would open up more opportunities for local suppliers, local farmers and food production businesses who want to be able to supply local schools because they'd be able to do that in one central point. Has that come to pass is my first question, and even if it's a follow-up, that's fine. Do you have any stats on local versus out of region sourcing for school meals? So that's the question 1. The other question is that at that time, one of the things that impacted the decision was the notion that if Perth and Kinross came into the central production unit, it made it more economically viable, helped with economies of scale, and then that would enable the central production unit to be marketed to other public and private bodies as a source of food production. And then that if that happened, it would bring our unit prices down further. Interested to know whether that has happened, whether there have been other significant customers secured, and if not, is there still headcount allocated to making that happen, or is that something that's no longer a priority? Thank you.
Okay, answering the first question around about the local supply market, we engaged with local suppliers back in 2022 to be able to encourage them to get access to the markets that we tap into. So Tayside contracts are linked in with, if you would say, government framework contracts, Scotland Excel, one for the compliance side of things, but also to make sure that that we can get that constant delivery of the services that we've got. I've not got the information here today, but we do look at that with those particular suppliers. So, for example, Campbell's Meats, we are linking in with them to say, right, okay, what's part of your supply chain for the whole area? So I'm not sure if we've got a benchmark of what that was prior to, if you want to say, going to the central production unit, but it's definitely something that we look at with them. You may or may not have seen something just posted yesterday round about the introduction of venison burgers within the secondary school estate across the whole of, again, the 3 councils. That's not on the back of, as some may think, because of the publicity, etc., round about meat and ultra-processed foods. It's something we've been working on with that provider for quite some time to see how we can get something that sustainably comes in, but also we have that regular supply, right? Okay, so we can't go directly to the local suppliers round about, but what we do encourage them to do is link in, and we provide those pathways, these gateways with those particular providers, and it's something that we are looking at again. So that was 2022. What can we do again to engage with that supply chain within the local area? And it's something that I'm very keen to explore, and not just do the same thing again. What can we do that's maybe differently that will get them on board? So really important to us to have that supply chain, not just from the food side of things, but just the local economy as a whole. That relates to the construction side. In relation to the economies of scale, as the 3 collectives coming together, that makes the CPU operate more effectively and efficiently in all 3. And we have engaged with a number of local authorities since 2022. What I would say is that we can lead them to water, but we can't make them drink. Right? Okay, so I think we've had at least 5 other local authorities come to see us with the view, is that something that they could take up? And of them, I think there's at least 1 or 2 who have come back again on a couple of occasions to revisit. Now, the reason that a number of them haven't, if you want to say, transitioned, is for it to be as say financially viable to them as it was to 3 councils. They need to be looking at how they deliver then the service locally. So it does have an impact on the people that they currently employ. So all 3 councils took up the CPU here, took that on board. So it meant repurposing our particular staff. I think these other external clients at the moment are struggling with that. But I do believe if financial pressures continue to go the way that they do, they will be forced into it. So it's waiting to the point of crisis for some before they can go. And as you can imagine, repurposing staff, and that maybe being taken as if you were sitting here as one of their members, to adjust maybe what somebody is going to be getting as their pay, because it generally comes down the way. That's not an easy decision to make. And on top of that, we also have, we're looking at opportunities round about the external care home provision, both from a council side of things and from a private care home provision, along the lines of how we deliver our community meals. So it's very much at the forefront of what we can do to hopefully expand the benefits of the central production unit and be able to maximise that. It's one of our key objectives of our commercialisation.
And next question, second question from Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Convener. This is not, I was just wanting to clarify about, you commented on ultra-processed foods. Could you give us a description of the food that you supplied? Is it ultra-processed foods?
I am no expert on this at all. And what I would say is that ultra-processed foods cover things from bread, right the way through to somebody may say is a fizzy drink and everything in between. So yes, Tayside contracts have a variety of items that are on our menu that are ultra-processed foods. I think the focus that has been, if you want to say within the press, has been round about areas of what's been seen as substitutes for meat, so soya and corn. But that cannot be the single focus of ultra-processed food. So it's a very complex area, and I'm no expert in it, but from food and nutritionists that I have working with me and what we have going within our school meal menu, want to give the reassurance that it's fully compliant, it meets the nutritional standards laid out by Scottish Government, and there is nothing that we've got within that breaches any of those particular standards.
I was trying to pick up on your comment about the venison, because we know venison is an organic source and it's a very low fat. How much of your food option is of a high fat sugar content? But particularly in your report, there's reference made to controlled diets and supporting people moving to reducing their calories. Could you expand on the food choices that you have?
Food choices that we have within Tayside contracts to cover a wide range of dietary requirements, and also the use of, you want to say, different products to be able to produce that. All I can say is that every single one of the meals that we provide has to meet strict requirements around about the nutritional value, the fat content, the sugar, the salt. So it's not seen as a collective. Every single meal that we have on our menu has to fit within that, and those are requirements that are set out by the Scottish Government guidance around about the provision of school meals. What we do is we take on board feedback, both positive and negative, from customers, so the pupils themselves, parents, carers, to make sure that we have got the meals that people want to eat, but balancing with those particular guidelines. So as has been raised here, we've got pupils that are entitled to a free school meal. We want them to be able to take that. We'd love that to be 100%. But I'd also say that a meal that is provided and then not eaten, like UK, isn't something that we want to be in a position to be looking at either. So all of particular opportunities of, if it's meat, so red meat, that is governed again. There's only a certain amount of red meat that we can have on the menu on any given time. That's limited by guidance. That's not Tayside contracts decision. It's about making sure that that meets those particular regulations. And if through time that means that we can introduce what is currently seen and referenced as more sustainable, things like venison, we will look at that. But the customer is going to have to want to eat that too. There is no point in us, because we've been here before, putting lamb and references to people going, I don't want to eat that, right, okay, because it's a perception. Similarly with venison, people go, don't want to eat Bambi. These are the challenges that we have to overcome, I would say, and that's something that we're continuing to look at to see how we can integrate these within our menus.
Thank you, Convener. On page 35, you made reference to the potholes and the gullies, and you haven't met either of those targets. I'm wondering if the issues are linked, and your target for the potholes was 80%, and why is it not 100%?
Again, the references to the policy there are set by Perth and Kinross Council, and it's about what's actually achievable with the resources. So financial resource, physical resource. So I think the targets that have been set, as I think's demonstrated there, are reasonable, but the fact that they've not been able to be achieved, they were set at 100%. I couldn't tell you, but to achieve something at 100% may mean that you need to have double the amount of funds to be able to deliver that 100%, and we may have to increase the resource, significantly just to achieve that. So I think it's the KPIs, targets are set based on what's actually going to be achievable, and they're not far off there. And I think I don't have the information here for 25, 26, but I think there's been improvement on both these particular areas.
Councillor Shires.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you for your presentation, Dougie. My question centres around, and it talks about in the report, there's been a lot of time devoted this year to continuous improvement, to the internal scrutiny, to all the elected members that are on the Joint Committee have more of an understanding about how Tayside Contracts works and what we're looking to achieve into the future and how we deliver for the 3 local authorities. I personally found it really interesting, useful, and challenging in terms of my role within that context, and I know others from other local authorities have expressed similar. So I suppose my question is, how do you envisage it going into the future, because we're all conscious of the amount of time that's been spent on this. So how do you envisage that future scrutiny and engagement taking place in that, and the format that will take? There was a discussion about an additional committee, which we've now decided was not actually needed, and I think it has been helpful having everybody involved. So it's just to get an understanding of how that might all look in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Shires. As I said at the outset, there's a fact that we're reporting here on a period which was 10 months ago. I feel we've continued to move on, and we've actually been able to have reassurance from some external parties that what we've implemented has actually addressed some of these particular key points round about scrutiny and governance. So quite an intensive period from 23 right the way through to, suppose you say, the end of 25. My hope is that information that's been provided in engagement sessions demonstrate that we have made improvements. So what we'll continue to do, we'll continue to develop and look at areas round about performance and dashboard and accessibility to information. Stakeholder engagement, I believe, has been a real benefit. So rather than everything coming up to committee, that we can set out a plan and a programme of the areas that are of interest to the committee members, so that we can have the opportunity to present information there and afford the opportunity for possibly more discussion and debate than what allows for at the committee forum. So that's how I see that being more structured, which will hopefully not be such a significant impact on the limited resources that we have from our corporate services and even our operational side. We do run very lean. So as I have made reference to our support of self-assessment and budget update last week, I now want to be in the position where we can be looking forward. I feel that for probably about the last 2 or 3 years, we've been continuing to have to look backwards to justify why Tayside Contracts has been here and the benefits. And I want the opportunity in the role of the managing director to be able to build on what has been done right now, but by going forward. So the limited resource I have with my management team, with all my operational staff, is for us to be able to be looking forward rather than backwards. And I feel that the setup that we've had, as I said, the recent Audit Scotland report identified that we had strong governance in place. It continued to be the right model to be delivering forward. We had made significant inroads in relation to improvements. So, it's not just me saying that. We've got an external body and entity saying the same thing. So the question was, there was a trust from Tayside contracts, I'm looking for all three parties to be able to trust me to take things forward and be able to demonstrate through, if that's the engagement sessions or reports if necessary, that we are the right model to deliver, that we are doing that in a cost efficient, effective way, that the quality of what we deliver is what's expected. And that should be where we're focusing our time and efforts on, to make sure, rather than looking backwards, to justify why we're here as an organisation.
And you wanted to come in with a comment, Councillor Shires?
Yeah, just to say that I think that's really helpful and a really good summary of where we are and where we've been. I just think I think we are conscious of that limited amount of physical, people resource, and it just needs to be focused on the job in hand. So, but thank you very much, and thank you for your leadership in it, Dougie, because I think that's been really helpful.
Councillor Massey.
Thank you. This is a rather personal question from my point of view, but bear with me, it does become a question in the end. As you said in one of your answers to Councillor Stewart just a couple of questions ago, you spoke about food choices, and on page 29, you have put up a menu from 24-25, and there is a lot of choice contained in that menu, which is really good. But one thing I have to say about the menu, and the reason I'm saying it is will become clear, is that you've got below it that it may contain nuts, may contain sesame, vegetarian, vegan, may contain eggs, milk. You do not have gluten-free. Now, I'm a celiac, so I have to watch what I'm eating. Being a celiac, I have to eat certain things. I can't eat anything with gluten in it, obviously, because gluten can cause in me rheumatoid arthritis, digestive problems, nutritional deficiencies, neurological issues. Some say I've already got them, bowel health issues, and skin conditions. So can I ask that you maybe look into, and the thing is that your menu, being a celiac, I make quite a lot of my own meals, and there's probably about 10 or 12 of those meals that can quite easily be turned into gluten-free. And you don't have to have wheat in them quite easily. It's not a hard process, and no one would know the difference. The taste is exactly the same. Don't give them bread, because the bread is terrible. But anyway, but most of them can. So can I ask if you could maybe look into putting gluten-free GF against the menu items?
Thank you, Councillor Massey. What I would say is that we are able to deal with conditions, for example, like celiac. That's done through our adapted meal menu process. But what we have picked up is that is becoming significantly onerous. I think we've got something like 1,200 individual adapted meal menus that we have to pick up. So somebody who approaches us and says that there may be gluten-free, so appreciate what you're identifying. There is maybe some meals within there that you wouldn't have to do that. You could just put that in. That's something that I'll take on board and liaise with our team around about the opportunities to be able to do that. But I just want to give the reassurance that if somebody comes forward with a particular condition, that they can approach us. That's part of the process, and we will adapt a meal menu specifically for those particular needs. But said it's becoming very onerous to be able to do that.
But like I said, I mean, I can look at these meals, I can change a good part of these meals quite easily into something that's gluten-free. It wouldn't be onerous. Everybody will have the same meal. The gluten, except it would be gluten-free. It's not a hard job to do that. It really isn't. It might sound it, but it isn't. It isn't a hard job. And if you want me, I'll come down to your kitchen. I'll show you.
I said I'm not suggesting it's hard, and I don't have the details. I may go back and they go and say that actually they are gluten free. It's just not being represented on that menu appropriately. I'd have to double check on that. It's what I'm coming back with to be on, and we can look at that. I just want to give the assurance that if somebody was gluten free, it's not that they can't then get a meal provided from ourselves, but it would be adapted to meet those particular needs. But I do accept there's maybe some within here that could just be dealt with as as a general, and gluten-free being one.
Out to you that gluten-free, being gluten-free and celiac are two different things.
Okay, and you've got a further question, Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, convener. In your presentation and in your report, but one of my colleagues often refers to as chunky money. But I was looking at your community fund, and you've got an action on page 57 about further extending the community fund. But my question is, why, when we look at Dundee and Angus, they access a lot more of the money proportionally to Perth and Kinross? What are we doing wrong to access that money? And it's small amounts of money, but it can be huge things for local communities.
All I can say to that is that Tayside Contracts promotes the community fund as widely as it can through all the media outlets. We share that with committee members. We share that as far and wide as we can. So it's up to those that's who are accessible to that to be able to tie in. What I would say is, so for 24-25, so this is the information that's within the report. In 24-25, we've been able to support 93 groups across all the areas. The value for this year was 93,000. Within Perth, 27 full applications have been supported and 11 fast track. So if you want to say, so when we talk about 93, there's probably about a third, right, okay, of that. And it's not set up in a way to say there is 33% of that fund is available to the three particular areas. It's not done that way. It's based on applications. Do they meet the criteria? Is it viable? And there's representatives, and Councillor Welsh sits on the group for Perth and Kinross to be able to assess them. And I think if there was anybody wanting some sort of overview, rather than me telling you beyond this, I'd like to think you'd give the reassurance that what comes through, they're viable and they're supported. So when we push that out, all I can say is to continue to let community groups within your area know that fund's available and they're able to apply. Information's roundabout guidance and how you do that is on our website, and there's also contact details there if somebody wants some further assistance on how they can contribute.
Thanks. Can I just follow up quickly? Can I just check that the community fund is only open to community groups, and you don't get sneaky requests from council departments to do something that should otherwise be funded publicly?
Yeah, it's only open to, let's say, community groups, charitable organisations. The criteria of that's laid out within the guidance. And yes, we have had some opportunist, sneaky council departments putting in through there, and unfortunately have not been successful. Sometimes that's they've been maybe trying to do the right thing by putting an application in on behalf of somebody. We've encouraged them and we've advised them that it has to come direct from that particular group. So their support is by supporting the community group to complete that application rather than them putting the application in on their behalf. So again, we've reiterated that a number of times to those who've come in directly.
Okay, thank you. And as you mentioned, Councillor Welch, he shall appear. Councillor Welch.
Thank you, convener. My question is in terms of, obviously you've been targeted over a number of years, and particularly in the last year or so with increasing efficiencies. How do you essentially encourage, those the sort of, if you like, the coalface of your teams to identify different and more efficient ways of working and look to then both encourage and reward that. Thank you.
So promoting efficiencies and, if you want to say, opportunities to improve, everyone is empowered within the organisation. What we do is, so various means of how that can be done. So there's obviously engagement through line management, where line management meetings round about specific, if you want to say, performance information, or where we are discussing information that's need to go to the particular operational sort of front line, but they're also given the opportunity to come back at various management levels within the organisation. It's something that's on the agenda to be able to look at. But areas that, for me, that drive improvement and efficiencies come through things like that we're reporting here on performance information. That performance information isn't just to tick a box to be able to come along to a committee. It's there to actually either identify that there's opportunities to be able to improve, and it may be things, and we've covered it there. It's round about the robotics, so that can be something that's approached by employees or members of staff. So that's all encouraged, and I then bring that together through our management team setup. So we're going through our budget process right now. That's not just about where the income is coming in, it's about where are there opportunities for us to become efficient. Is there opportunities for innovation for us to bring that in that may help with other agendas? So for me, I could rattle off lots of things that we've done over the years where we've introduced benefits. Central production unit is one, like UK as a group coming together, innovation, improvement and efficiencies. The other areas of coming together as a whole collective of delivering the facilities management service coming under TSI contracts, again, was an area that delivered efficiencies round about services, and we've done the same things on the construction side. Recycling, alternative materials, reed bed facilities. I think we have got a real good history and platform where we can demonstrate that's not something that we sit on our laurels on, and actually within not just industry, definitely within local authority, but with industry, we've been actually front leaders in taking forward some very innovative and efficient ways of delivering the services.
Thanks for that answer, and unfortunately, I'm going to have to dip out of this meeting, but I appreciate your answer with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat, but I've got one, or two actually. First one relates to the additional income through increased shared service with constituent councils and the increased shared service, where one was 6.9 million turnover, 1.4 million turnover than target, and the other was 5.9 million more than target. That's somewhere around 7.3 million more than target. Had there not been that extra turnover, would there still have been a distributable, that 800 and however many thousand it was, distributable surplus to the councils?
That's not as straightforward to be able to say yes or no, sorry. Some of those increases will have come through, as I said at the outset, actually inflationary increases, so it's not a direct turnover. If some of that didn't come through, then we maybe not been spending we wouldn't have the resources to spend on it. So it's not, without going into the detail, we obviously have a fixed resource, and if there's a change in the service, but we've still got that fixed resource, then that would definitely have a potential impact on a surplus return. but in the majority of the times we can adjust that, right, okay, to be able to say the turnover is matched by either not having the resource to deliver it, or we've maybe delivered that additional with an external resource. So the use of subcontractors that we do within Tayside contracts when we've got peaks and troughs, so it could come from that. So without actually going into the detail of what the increase was actually down to, I can't say if it's, you know, we meant it would have been a lesser surplus or a deficit.
Yeah, thank you, Convener, for that question. And just a short follow-up. It led me to just check in with you as to whether across the board, do you have a good gauge for what the high margin versus low margin activities you're doing are, so that you can chase after more of the high margin, or if you're doing the low or no margin activities, you know you're doing those because you have to, because you're helping us with a statutory duty or whatever. Is that an analysis at which you as a management board are looking across what you're doing?
So we've been asked a similar question, I suppose I would say more regularly over the last 12 months. Tayside contracts are here to deliver a cost-efficient service at the front line. We're not returning to shareholders. Right, okay, so the move away from being able to return a significant surplus or profit is no longer the driver, and that wasn't something that came from Tayside contracts directly. That was, if you want to say, an objective from chief executives. So actually setting a margin within a council to say, I'm going to get more of a return for that particular type of work versus something else, isn't something that we have a focus on, particularly when we're delivering things in partnership. That very much is trying to, you know, make the pound go as far as it can and work together to be able to do that. When we're put within the external market, so if somebody was to go and put works out within a council through the external market that we've got to return on, then we will look at what is that market, is there a market rate for that, and we'll pitch it. Now that may be something that is above what we actually need, but we would pitch it with that market rate. So there isn't a specific, you know, we've been asked, is there a dynamic sort of strategy, right, okay, around about what your price and how your returns are? Yes, there is, because we do have to look at that from the external and the internal side of things. But I would say that 93%, that 91 million that I refer to as, we should be working together collectively to ensure that, you know, the best use of that pound comes to the service at the front end, rather than it being focused on, if you want to say, a surplus. And I'm pleased to say that in a number of the areas that has been looked at. So thinking about things about outcome driven rather than input, so telling somebody exactly how you've got to do something, for me is no longer the way to approach service delivery, particularly when you're in such financially challenging times.
Thanks. And my other question was about, I think when you were here last year, we were just about to embark on the increase in employers' national insurance contributions, and I just wondered how that was dealt with by Tayside contracts. Was that passed through from the councils, or did you have to find a way of managing that within your own organisation?
So any of the cost increases that have come through, so pay award, the changes in national insurance, we have to pass these on. There's no way, we don't have reserves or other means to be able to not have that covered. I think the point being is, rather than that just going, it's an addition, we continue to look at, is there other areas where we can make those efficiencies, where is there opportunities to mitigate against some of these costs. I would say that you know, those opportunities, like I think in a lot of services, are pretty well gone. Like, okay, I'm not saying that there's still not ongoing opportunities for innovation, improvement that will help, if you want to say, with mitigation against cost impact. And that's what it is. What we're trying to do is, you know, what can we do to mitigate against that? But the changes to the national insurance affected us, I would say, greater than what it would have done probably within the council, because 74% are at that lower wage. So by reducing that threshold then meant that we had far more employees that we've got to pay national insurance for. So again, as a percentage of how that impacted Tayside contracts, we had to move that on, not used it, but the reality being if we weren't delivering that service for you and that was in-house, you would still have to pick that up. Right, okay, so it's where that actually sits.
Thank you. And last question. When you set the targets for the key performance indicators, are those targets movable in terms of you can increase the target for the following year? Because some of these key performance indicators you've smashed out the park, which suggests to me that the target was not ambitious enough in the first place. So where you've got a good performing area, would you increase the target to make sure you're maintaining that performance?
Yeah, we can look at that through the business plan. It was over the 3-year period, and in relation to the KPIs, some of these had ongoing. So it was year 1 we're looking to achieve this, year 2, which was what we're reporting on here, year 3 will be the next set that some of these indicators do incrementally increase, and if they don't, then we can look at these and put in place to say, okay, we are either formally doing it, or we can say, right, okay, that was the target, but this is what we're doing to ensure that that's maintained, because sometimes your indicator can be above a particular target for a reason that's maybe not sustainable, right? Okay, but so I can't think of anyone specifically within there, but they do adjust.
Thank you very much. No more questions in the chat. No more questions in the room. Great. Thanks then, Mr. Mackay, for your presentation and for ably taking the questions from committee members. I think it's good to have an ongoing dialogue and to get you back. We'll try and make it a bit earlier in the year after your next performance report comes out. But thanks very much for your time and for your colleagues' time, and apologies for the delay to the start of the meeting, which was unavoidable, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to come along.
Okay, members, the last item on the agenda is a very short one. It is the Perth and Kinross Health and Social Care Partnership Care and Professional Governance Assurance Report. The only report is a written one in that there were no social work or social care issues escalated for exception reporting. Can we note that? Okay, members, that brings to a conclusion our business this afternoon. Thank you very much for your attendance and for your engagement. Meeting's closed.